Bernard, Derek Mackay has kept a very low profile. Why do you think he agreed to do this interview?
I think he was always going to defend his position in relation to the ferries contract at some point. The reason that he hasn't done it up until now is that he had to give evidence to the Public Audit Committee of the Scottish Parliament, who are probing this entire fiasco, and it would have been quite inappropriate for him to give a television interview before he gave evidence. Of course, his evidence to the committee went very largely unreported because it took place on the day that the Queen actually died. So now that that is in the past, I think he's defending his position. And the MSPs, when they come to make a determination in this, will look at what he's said to them, no doubt what he's said to us tonight, and we'll make a judgment about where this narrative fits in.
Alastair, Derek Mackay's position appears to be that there's no single point where the procurement, during the procurement process, where it all went wrong. What do you think led to this horrible fiasco?
Well, I think alarm bells were ringing right from the start. Last year, the public spending watchdog Audit Scotland made quite clear into its report that severe misgivings had been expressed by CMAL, the procuring authority, which was passed to Transport Scotland. And almost a year later, we still haven't seen whether that and how that information was relayed to ministers, because it certainly seemed to be very much played down by Derek Mackay. And secondly, Ferguson Marine had been a successful shipyard in the past, successfully producing ferries for CalMac, but something went badly wrong with this contract, saying one thing and then building it in the ferries in an entirely different way, which led to so much acrimony with CMAL.
And, you know, there have been suggestions that Ferguson's gained preferred bidder status in a way that broke EU procurement rules. Derek Mackay says CMAL has a case to answer. Would you agree with that?
Well, he agreed with the proposition that there was a case to answer. I'm sceptical about why CMAL would not do anything by the book. They've successfully procured major ferries like these ones before, in the 9 years they've been operating before this all blew up. Also, I'm sceptical about some of the things in the BBC documentary about Ferguson Marine supposedly getting advantage over the other bidders by having access to these major dossiers, when I understand that information was superfluous, unhelpful, produced by CalMac, and in fact the key information was provided to all bidders, and I'm told they absolutely didn't get any advantage.
And Bernard, was there anything within the interview that could be politically difficult for the First Minister?
Well, Derek Mackay, I thought, was going out of his way not to point the finger at anyone. There is nothing in the interview, or indeed anything that he said to the Parliamentary Committee, which I think would give the First Minister sleepless nights. I mean, to a certain extent, the Parliamentary Committee have a difficult job because they've taken evidence from all of the key stakeholders. Some of that evidence is contradictory. So how do they reconcile this at the end of the day? It may well be that the only way that we're going to get to the bottom of all of this, starting from the procurement process and whether or not CMAL do have a case to answer in relation to where the procurement process was managed. Perhaps the only way we'll get to the bottom of this is to take it out a parliamentary arena and to have the kind of independent inquiry that Jack McConnell ordered when Lord Fraser of Carmiley had his probe into the cost overruns of the Holyrood building project, which was another procurement project in Scotland which went massively wrong.
Alastair, talking about the procurement process, is there anything about the process that is so dysfunctional that it goes against the interests of communities, do you think?
I don't think so, because it's worked successfully, as I mentioned, with other big ferries that have been built, procured by CMAL and been built, and in fact smaller ferries built by Ferguson Marine, which CMAL has been very, very happy with. It's no accident that CMAL exists and was different from CalMac. It was forced on the Scottish Government as part of European competition rules, and it's likely to stay because the Scottish Government would clearly want us to be back in the EU again.
So what has this delay meant for communities?
Well, it's happened at the worst possible time. There's been a significant slowdown in the replacement of new vessels over the last decade or so. Many are well past their lifespan. There's no spare vessel. And at the same time, the ageing fleet is being worked harder than ever. Extra services have been added. Fares have been cut to bring ferry fares more in line with road. And so the impact is that when there is a breakdown, and CalMac is saying this will happen increasingly while the fleet is ageing, that will have an even bigger impact because more people are travelling.
I mean, they are desperately needed, aren't they? Bernard, a public audit committee is probing this. What do you think they'll do?
Well, the job of the committee is to establish facts and then to come to conclusions and recommendations based upon those facts. But as I've said, they've heard contradictory evidence, and where politicians are always involved, they're always looking to indict the government. So those who are not SNP members of the committee will be looking for a paper trail which leads to a politician's office where they can say, here's where it all went wrong. The SNP members of the committee, in a sense, will be trying to get it off the role of ministers and perhaps onto the role of the agencies. And for that reason, I suspect this committee will split along party lines. The Auditor General will continue to make observations, particularly around procurement, but the only way that we may well get a definitive judgment untainted by politics is to have an independent inquiry.
OK, and just really in a sentence, Alastair, we might see the ferries when? Next year, year after?
The first one is due to be delivered in the summer, so should be in service later this year. The second one next year.
OK.
You're a brave man.
Yes, yeah, I will hold you to that. Bernard and Alastair, thanks for joining us.